Would you put police in schools? And if so, how will you consult young people in schools about this?
No, they don't need to be in school. Schools, full stop. Um, if you want me to have a debate about it, I will do, if anyone disagrees with that. But they shouldn't be in schools. I think creating those community hubs that include teachers and social workers and youth workers away from schools is perfectly fine, and that's all we need to do. With that, having police officers in schools is only going to be detrimental to people's safety, their feeling of confidence, their education as a whole, and what powers are police going to have in schools? Are we going to have students being searched every day? No.
So one of the reasons why people may support is putting police in schools is that it would support this idea of safety in schools. So if you are against this, how will you make sure that young people are safe in schools? And is there a way that you could use education to ensure this?
So safety in schools, we do have a problem in how we speak to young people in this country, and it's a wider conversation, but it involves proper drug and alcohol education. It involves proper and age-appropriate sex education. It involves proper female empowerment. It involves proper, religious tolerance training and engagement. And actually building those programs into our education curriculum once again, properly and effectively, will reduce intolerance, bullying, sexism, misogyny in schools. And to be fair, teachers should feel empowered to call it out. They already are able. They're in the position of power when you're in school. They should be calling it out and stopping it.
I'd just like to ask, you've said in the past how important it is to listen to young people and the youth voice. So why didn't you consult young people before announcing plans to put police officers in schools when so many young people have concerns about the initiative?
Well, thanks, Jacob. I realise people do have concerns about it, but consultation is baked into the plans, if I could put it that way. So school-based police officers are not a new policy. They've been around a long time. I think Wright Robinson still have one that goes back to a long time ago, actually. And when I was MP for Lee, we had them in Fred Longworth High School and Wesley High School. So they're a long-standing policy, and we've faced a call in recent times for them to be expanded. So schools were coming to us, head teachers were coming to us saying they wanted them to be expanded. So the policy was already pre-existing, so I couldn't really consult on that because it was already a policy. What we have done, though, Jacob, is bake into the policy consultation if a new school-based officer is to be added to a new school. So we've said that the parents, the students, the community should be consulted before that plan is agreed between the school and GMP. So consultation is baked into that proposal.
This plan has caused concern, especially because the reality of police brutality and systemic racism in the police force have become apparent over recent years. How will these schools be decided? How will you justify these decisions? And how can you reassure communities who may be uncomfortable with this plan?
So what I would say is that it's very much for the school to decide. So we don't foist an officer on any school. So it would be for the head teacher to decide, and it then has to have that broader consent of the kind I was talking about before. If you speak to people at Wright Robinson, I think the students there would, as far as I understand it, would say that they value, because bear in mind, people will have different views of the police from your own experiences, but some young people will find it a reassurance, particularly those who might be at risk of bullying or whatever. So it's kind of different according to people's perceptions of their safety, etc. So that is what I would say. And the issues that you've just identified about the kind of concerns people might have. The point of a school-based police officer is it's meant to build trust at an earlier age. You know, we've got to, you know, build trust in the police, haven't we? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we want to have policing, as we say, by consent, with people's support. And I think sometimes that distrust can be there because the contact isn't there and there isn't that relationship between the police and young people at a community level. And the evidence I had when I was an MP was that school-based police officers build that trust. They build that dialogue and that relationship. And I think it's a policy that's got a lot to recommend it myself. But equally, I could see how some people may see it differently depending on the local context and the you know, the views in any particular community. So I am not foisting it on anybody. But if a school is saying they really want one, then obviously it's to be done then with the consent of the school, of the students, the parents, and the wider community. So the idea is to build trust where it may not exist, and that's one of the reasons for the policy.
I'd like to ask you, would you put police in schools? And if so, how would you consult young people in schools about this?
My immediate reaction is absolutely not. I remember being truly horrified by the thought of putting the police in schools when that was first mooted. And my view hasn't changed. You know, I go back to what I was just saying in answer to the last question. If that was something that people were coming to me and saying, this population of Greater Manchester's young people and schoolgoers actually want that to happen, then that's something I'd have to listen to and hear why. But no, I don't believe that the police should be in school. And that's something that I would be quite resistant to.
What's your plan to prevent this idea from coming up again? And how can you use other things to keep us safe in school, for example, education?
I think that that's a really important question. And I think it ties in with a sort of another hat on that I have. I have just completed a master's in counterterrorism. I'm just undertaking a PhD in counterterrorism. And one of the things that I am looking at, not saying that your schools are at risk of terrorist attacks, please don't, but one of the things that we've looked at as part of that is around sort of radicalisation and about how children are potentially radicalised and brought into violence and those sorts of wider issues. And it's something I know an organisation that you may have come across, Hope Not Hate, have been looking into about how teachers are trained on recognising those sorts of aspects. And that's part of where my PhD thesis is looking at, is what schemes like Prevent and training around those actually teach people like the police, but also teachers, doctors, nurses, and how to recognise issues and concerns. And I am of the view that I don't think that that's being done in an appropriate way. I think it's being overly simplified and it's not recognising the real risks. So I think that that is a bigger issue for me to bring on and bring that sort of counter-terrorism hat into play very much, to look at actually what is the danger within those sort of issues. So if it is children who and young people who've been radicalised in some way, and it doesn't have to be into, you know, a well-known terrorist organisation, it can just be into crime or into gangs or into antisocial behaviour, is looking at actually recognising that early, working, you know, having a system that works not in a way like Prevent that can cause problems and upset and outcry, but that works to build relationships and to bring children back from that before we get to schools being set on fire or you know, potentially weapons in classrooms. And it goes back to where I've said with a lot of these questions is it's about looking at the causes, not coming in heavy-handed to just take on the impact. So I think that's where it would come down to. It wouldn't be an immediate fix because those things take time to embed. And if there were genuine risks to schools, we'd have to look at how to manage those on a sort of case-by-case basis. But I think overall, that would be how I would look at it, is to approach it from fixing those issues and recognising them, empowering teachers and school staff better.